As the hero lay dying on the cold ground, his former comrades stood over him, expressing their disgust for the filthy monster he supposedly was. One of his companions then rationalized the act as a holy purification, while the hero questioned why he had ever trusted them again. With his last breath, he realized this brutal end was his punishment for foolishly clinging to the concept of trust. However, just as his life of betrayal came to an end, a system message announced that the Holy Sword of Vengeance had been unlocked, marking a new beginning. His thoughts drifted back to his former allies, who plotted to mercilessly slaughter their enemies with the cruelest methods imaginable. One of them vowed to carve the memory of their cruelty so deep into their victims' hearts that they would never forget it, even in their next life. Meanwhile, a red-haired girl in his party quietly wondered where they had all gone so wrong, as the hero felt his body begin to fail. Lying in a pool of his own blood, a sinister chuckle suddenly escaped the hero's lips, signaling a shift from despair to pure rage. This quiet laugh then erupted into a full-blown, maniacal cackle, spraying blood as he seemed to relish his own demise. Alarmed, his betrayers questioned why he refused to die, dismissing his resilience as nothing more than a powerless glare. But with a look of absolute terrifying conviction, the hero, Ukai Kaido, swore that he would definitely kill every last one of them. At that precise moment, his consciousness faded, and Ukai Kaido, the betrayed hero, finally lost his life. In the void, a system message declared that the sealing process was complete, using his accumulated experience points as a key. Following the sealing, another message initiated a regression process, sending his very being back to his original starting point. Ukai Kaido's eyes snapped open to find himself sitting on a summoning circle, where a figure in a white dress warmly welcomed him. A beautiful blonde princess smiled down at him, extending a hand as she welcomed the brave hero to their world. Stunned, Kaido looked up at her, the memory of her betrayal still fresh and burning vividly in his mind. In a sudden burst of pure instinct, he lunged forward, his fist connecting squarely with the surprised princess's face. The immense force of the blow sent her tumbling to the ground as Kaido panted, adrenaline coursing through him. In response, the surrounding knights rushed forward in alarm, shouting the princess's name and asking if she was all right. Kaido knelt, flexing his hand in confusion, while the princess sputtered in disbelief at what he had just done. He grabbed her by the hair, noting with surprise that his attack had been incredibly weak and lacked any of his usual strength. Standing up, Kaido wondered what was happening, questioning how he could feel so lively when he should have been dead. He then looked down at his clothes, recognizing the familiar school uniform he wore when he was first summoned. His gaze swept across the room, identifying it as the summoning chamber in the very same royal capital. Immediately, he dismissed the idea of teleportation, knowing the impossible distance between the capital and the place where he died. For a moment, he considered that this might be a vision of past memories that people supposedly experience just before death. However, he questioned this theory, as the physical sensation of punching the princess felt undeniably real. As he pondered his situation, his sharpened senses suddenly picked up on a wave of pure hostility aimed directly at him. Reacting instantly, Kaido dodged an attacking knight and delivered a powerful strike aimed squarely at his neck. Horrified, the princess could only watch as the knight was sent flying across the room from the single blow. Kaido calmly turned to the injured guard, casually asking him why his neck was still in one piece. The knight clutched his throat in pain, wondering if his attacker had used some kind of enhancement that he couldn't sense. Puzzled, Kaido admitted to himself that he had fully intended to kill the man by twisting his neck clean off. He took a quiet moment to process this strange new reality, trying to understand what was happening to him. Just then, the princess, flanked by her guards, shakily asked the brave hero what he found so unpleasant about them. With a face contorted by pure contempt, Kaido incredulously asked if Alicia was seriously asking him that question. For the first time, Alicia's calm demeanor cracked, revealing a hint of fear at his unbridled and unexpected rage. In an instant, Kaido moved again, blitzing past the guards before they could even react to his speed. He then delivered a vicious blow to her stomach, doubling the shocked princess over in intense pain. The princess let out a choked gasp, the wind having been knocked completely out of her. Kagito then loomed over her, coldly listing every single thing he despised about her, from her appearance to her mind. He punctuated his tirade by calling her exactly what she was, a traitorous bitch. Stunned and coughing, Alicia struggled to comprehend the sheer venom behind his words. Kaido grimly reminded her that she had said something quite similar right before she betrayed him. He vividly remembered her taunt, where she claimed it wasn't a betrayal because she never considered him an ally or even human. Clenching his fist in anger, Kaido admitted to himself that he was a complete fool for ever trusting her in the first place. However, he realized that this time, he could clearly sense the malicious ill intent hidden behind her charming smile. Gripping her throat, he decided he didn't care if this was a dream or reality, viewing it as a bonus time for revenge. With a cruel smile spreading across his face, Kaido prepared to make the most of this unexpected second chance. Lost in thought, Kaido firmly reminded himself of the vow he had made. With a terrifying grin, he confirmed that his one goal was to have his revenge. In sheer terror, the princess let out a pained scream. Without an ounce of pity, Kaido violently shoved her small frame forward. He then viciously slammed her face first onto the hard stone floor. Leaning in close, Kaido cruelly explained that he wanted to torment Alicia for as long as possible. Unleashing his fury, he began bashing her head into the ground with brutal force. With each sickening impact, the princess could only cry out in agony. Horrified by the scene, the nearby royal knights shouted at him to stop. Furious, one of the knights branded Kaido a bastard and lunged forward to attack. In response, Kaido's eyes widened with a predatory glee. Effortlessly, he sidestepped the blade and closed the distance in an instant. In a flash, his hand shot out and clamped around the knight's throat. With a savage roar, Kaido tore the man's throat out with his bare hands. As blood splattered across his face, he let out a truly deranged laugh. The other knights could only watch in stunned disbelief as their comrade fell. Now crouching in a battle stance, Kaido declared that all he wanted was his revenge. He mused that his heart would never be free until they suffered an anguish even greater than his own. After the slaughter, the hall fell silent, filled only with the sounds of the dying. Kaido stood over the bodies, his expression grim and resolute. Beneath him, the battered Princess Alicia panted for breath on the floor. Through her disheveled hair, Alicia could only glare at her tormentor with pure hatred. Calmly, Kaido crouched over her and materialized a small dagger in his hand. He then revealed the item was a jade-green crystal blade, a healing tool he wanted to stab her with. This action suddenly reminded him that he had been stabbed by the immortal killing treasured sword. Now curious about his own condition, he decided to open his status window. As the holographic screen appeared, he began to scan its contents. However, his eyes widened in shock as he registered the strange information. A cold sweat formed on his brow as he struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. He slowly reached out, touching the impossible text displayed on the screen. After reading the first few lines, Kaido was left utterly speechless. His status screen listed his name, Uke Kaido, but showed him at a pathetic level 1. He then noticed with alarm that it listed his age as 17 when he was certain he was 21. In utter disbelief, he muttered that he should have been well over level 300. His gaze continued down the screen, a sense of dread washing over him. The horrifying reality of his situation started to become undeniable. He saw that his only available skill was a basic level 1 fist strike. To test this, he desperately attempted to activate his familiar airwalk skill. To his dismay, only a single shimmering foothold materialized slowly in the air. Kaido could only remark on how pitifully slow the skill's activation was. As he tried to use the foothold, he immediately stumbled and lost his balance. In a panic, he frantically commanded his status screen to open once again. The details confirmed his fears, showing airwalk at skill level 1 with almost no proficiency. He then realized with dawning horror that the skill had only just been added. Kaido cursed aloud, lamenting that a level 1 skill was not only slow, but also a massive drain on his MP. He briefly wondered if this was the curse of the sword, but dismissed it as illogical. Suddenly, a far more terrifying possibility began to form in his mind. His eyes widened as he realized he could only use skills written in white text on his status screen. Completely overwhelmed, the boy clutched his head in despair. In sheer frustration at his powerless state, Kaido could do nothing but grit his teeth. The confrontation concluded as Princess Alicia slumped to the floor, utterly defeated by Ukai Kaito. Completely drained of strength, the princess could do nothing but lay on the cold, hard ground. However, Kaido's gaze remained sharp and unforgiving, his thirst for vengeance far from quenched. Sensing Alicia attempting a spell, he silenced her with a brutal kick to the ribs. He then cynically noted her penchant for surprise attacks, just like the one she was attempting. The sheer force of the blow sent her flying, forcing a scream of pure agony from her lips. Laughing maniacally, Kaido revealed he'd healed her just to prolong her suffering, calling her a pitiful woman. With a chilling smirk, he told Alicia that she had brought all of this upon herself. His triumphant expression then faded into a cold, contemplative stare as he processed his victory. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to an unfamiliar envelope icon that had appeared on his status screen. He stared at the strange new notification, a flicker of genuine curiosity in his eyes. All around him lay the gruesome evidence of his rampage, the bodies of knights scattered across the floor. Stepping over the fallen, Kaido loomed over the whimpering princess, his authority absolute. He brought up his status screen again, wondering aloud about the strange male icon. A deep sense of confusion washed over him as he pondered the meaning of this new feature. To assert his dominance, he ground his boot onto Alicia's head, eliciting a choked gasp of pain. Humming a pleasant tune, Kaido remarked on what a nice sensation this overwhelming power was. Finally, with a decisive click, he opened the mysterious message that had appeared. The mail stated that if he was reading this, it meant he had already died and returned to the moment of his summoning. To his utter disbelief, the message declared that everything he had experienced up to this point was merely a tutorial mode. The message, sent from a goddess, explained that even she could not predict or control where summoned individuals were transferred. Because of this uncertainty, most humans died immediately, unable to adapt to their new, hostile worlds. The tutorial was a system she had designed to prevent such a swift and pathetic end for her chosen heroes. It also clarified that all the experience points and skills he had acquired would be carried over. The goddess concluded her message by wishing him a happy life in this new, more dangerous world. Kaido quickly pieced it together, realizing this cheat meant his level had regressed because he'd survived too long in the tutorial. For a brief moment, he attempted to see the positive side of this shocking revelation. Then he suddenly threw his head back and broke into a wild, maniacal laughter, deciding he didn't care about the reason at all. He declared that with this new chance, he could finally accomplish the oath he had made. Looking down at Alicia, he knew this was not a dream and that he now had unlimited time for his revenge. With a truly sinister grin, Kaido vowed that he could now torture them all before finally granting them death. He began to contemplate his next move, wondering where he should begin his campaign of vengeance. He acknowledged that he could easily kill the woman at his feet right now. But as he clenched his fist in anticipation, he considered if simply killing them would be enough. He concluded with a wicked grin that he would not be satisfied with such a simple end for his betrayers. Gazing at Alicia's terrified face, he decided he wouldn't kill her, vowing to never let her go that easily. To that end, he resolved to do what was necessary and summoned his healing dagger, the jade green crystal blade. He announced that he would heal her now, as he needed her to deliver a message for him. A brilliant light then enveloped Alicia as the blade's magic began to mend her horrific wounds. Once she was restored, Kaido told her that he had a request which she defiantly rejected, calling him a monster. In response to her spirit, Kaido erupted into laughter once more, startling the princess. He told her that her reaction was just as he'd expected and warned her not to lose that fire, or his fun would be ruined. Frantic and terrified, Alicia screamed at the lunatic, demanding to know what she possibly could have done to him. His smile vanished instantly as he coldly informed her that she had done a great many things. He recounted the agonizing pain of being betrayed and deceived, wounds his foolish former self had received for trusting them. His eyes blazed with hatred as he swore he remembered it all, addressing her by her full name, Princess Alicia Aurelrea. Upon hearing this, Alicia could only stare back in shock and horror, completely speechless. With a disarmingly pleasant smile, Kaido cheerfully announced they should get back to the topic of his request. He then feigned sadness, remarking how tragic it would be if she refused after he'd gone through the trouble of healing her. Lying on the cold stone floor, Alicia could only look up in absolute terror, wondering what kind of being he truly was. With sudden force, Kaido violently pushed Princess Alicia to the ground, pinning her beneath him. In a panic, Alicia screamed desperately for him to stop this right now. Kaido coldly informed her that her chest would hinder him if he tried to use the front. He then admitted to himself that this whole situation felt incredibly weird. Kaido reflected that while he first saw her as a beautiful girl, he now felt absolutely nothing looking at her. In a brief flashback, he remembered a time when his heart throbbed just from accidentally seeing a girl changing her clothes. Misinformed, Alicia spat that people from another world were uncivilized and lowly beasts. With a look of utter disgust, Kaido questioned what she was even talking about. He crouched down, callously stating that he would never sleep with someone who had such a disgusting personality. Since she clearly wasn't willing to listen to his request, he decided to write down a letter instead. From his inventory, he summoned the fire spider's leg blade, which immediately ignited in a menacing blaze. Alicia's eyes widened in sheer terror as she began to understand his horrifying intention. With a cruel smile, Kaido confirmed that since she wouldn't listen to his message, he had no choice but to write it down. He calmly warned her not to move too much, explaining that he couldn't write properly if she kept moving. The searing hot tip of the blade made contact with her, burning a mark onto the stone floor. Consumed by unimaginable pain, Alicia let out a piercing shriek of pure agony. As the princess's screams echoed, Kaido casually hummed a tune while continuing his gruesome work. Through tears and pain gasps, Alicia begged him to stop the process, crying out that it burned. Her mind raced in despair, desperately pleading for someone to come and help her. In response, Kaido burst into maniacal laughter, taunting that no one would come to save such a stupid girl. He then leaned in with a twisted smile, telling her not to move because his letter was only halfway done. Finally, after some time had passed, he stretched his arm with a satisfied grunt. With the message now carved into her back, he calmly announced that the job was done. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness washed over him, causing him to sway unsteadily. He quickly realized that he had become drunk on his own MP, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a while. Checking his status, Kaido saw his MP had dropped to 81, a consequence of constantly healing Alicia to keep her alive. Realizing it was impossible to face the castle's 500 knights, he knew he had to leave immediately. Despite the pain, Alicia gritted her teeth and warned him that he would be tortured and killed in the end. Kaido found himself genuinely perplexed by how she could still harbor so much hostility after what he'd done. He ultimately concluded that such incredible resilience was to be expected from a princess. She vowed that the arrogance of an uncivilized man would be his undoing, promising she would not let him die easily. With eyes burning with hatred, Alicia swore she would kill him after drowning him in the same humiliation and pain he inflicted on her. Kaido gritted his teeth, a flicker of genuine emotion showing on his face in response to her vow. However, his expression quickly morphed into a sadistic grin as he complimented Alicia on her nice expression. He turned his back to her, cryptically stating that he could finally see it. Alicia tried to bargain, offering to save him if he begged for forgiveness and swore his allegiance. Kaido scoffed at the idea, amazed that she still had the spare energy to talk about something like that. Deep in his mind, however, a nagging voice whispered that this was still not enough. A maelstrom of violent urges filled his thoughts, reinforcing the idea that this revenge was far from satisfying. He knew that to be truly satisfied, he had to degrade them all much more before killing them. This realization brought him a grim pleasure, as it meant he could enjoy his revenge game for much longer. He stood there for a moment, silently contemplating his path forward amidst the carnage. With a heavy sigh, Kaido lamented how his past self was so easily deceived by someone as transparent as her. Alicia, noticing his strange reaction, angrily asked if he thought she was lying about the knights. Kaido explained that he knew she wasn't lying, because the barriers she erected were the real reason no one came. Completely shocked, Alicia demanded to know how he could have possibly known all of this. Ignoring her question, Kaido announced that he was really going this time and reached for a candlestick on the wall. He then firmly pulled on the candlestick, revealing it to be a hidden lever. With a heavy thud, a section of the stone wall began to slide open. As the wall rumbled, a dark, secret passage was revealed, presenting Kaido with his escape route. With a heavy thud, Kaido activated a hidden mechanism, revealing a secret passage down into the darkness. Stunned by this revelation, Princess Alicia demanded to know how he was aware of the secret royal pathway. Kaido cryptically replied that he had simply passed this way once before in a previous life. However, he suddenly stopped, realizing he had almost forgotten a dangerous but necessary precaution. He calmly stated that he had forgotten to ensure none of them could call for help, deciding to start with the knight at his feet. With a sadistic grin, Kaido explained he would test a new technique he learned for marvelously crushing a person's throat. He confidently summoned the fire spider's leg blade, certain it would be sufficient for the gruesome task. With a sharp pull, he forced open the deceased knight's mouth, preparing for the procedure. A horrific muffled sound escaped as he brutally plunged the fiery blade into the man's throat to destroy his vocal cords. After finishing with the first, he nonchalantly declared he was moving to the next victim. Having silenced all the guards, he finally pushed Princess Alicia to the floor with his foot, letting out a sigh. Looking down at the terrified royal, he declared that she was the last one left. Alicia could only lie there in silent terror, pinned under his shoe and unable to move. He then announced his intention to take her royal family Yucarino necklace, needing it to fund his coming revenge. After securing the necklace, he prepared to inflict the same silencing mutilation upon her. Kneeling down, he offered her a final chance to ask any questions, as he didn't think they would meet again for a long time. Mustering her courage, the battered princess weakly asked him to tell her his name. Kaito scoffed at the absurdity of her request, finding it ridiculous to reveal his identity in such a situation. Instead, he reminded her that he had already written all about himself in the painful letter he'd carved into her back. Leaning in close, he offered her a title to remember him by, telling her to call him the Second Chance Avenger. With his final, chilling declaration made, he turned and began to descend the hidden stairs. He walked further into the darkness of the passage, leaving the scene of carnage behind. But then, after taking only a few steps, he came to an abrupt and complete halt. A deep blush of shame and utter embarrassment suddenly washed over his face. In a fit of delayed self-awareness, he collapsed in agony, berating himself for coming up with such a cringy name. Shaking off the moment of intense cringe, Kaito finally emerged from the hidden exit into a sunlit forest. He took a deep, satisfying breath, relishing his first taste of true freedom. Feeling the exhilaration course through him, he prepared to let out a triumphant shout. Overlooking the capital, he screamed to the heavens that he was now, finally, a free man. Basking in the warmth, he remarked how good the sunlight felt after 3 long months since his first chance was stolen. He stretched his body, feeling the tension of his long captivity finally begin to fade away. Considering the condition he left Alicia and the others in, he calculated that he still had a full day before his escape was discovered. With a determined expression, he acknowledged that he still lacked the power, time, and preparation to fully accomplish his revenge. Therefore, he decided his first course of action would be to quickly earn his revenge funds and leave the royal capital. Back in the bustling city, ordinary life continued, with citizens like a young woman happily doing their shopping. A cheerful vendor assured his customer that his goods were fresh and highly recommended for the day. Observing the peaceful scene, Kaito identified all of these people as his foes for blindly believing the kingdom's lies. However, he admitted that they weren't his top priority at the moment, feeling no urge to harm them. His path eventually led him away from the main streets, his foot cracking over debris as he entered a much poorer district. He looked around the dilapidated area, noting that it was, as expected, the city's slum. While scanning the destitute residents, he wondered where the person he was looking for could be. Suddenly, a voice called out, asking the weirdly clothed Kaito what he was doing in a place like this all alone. A group of local thugs approached, smugly informing Kaito that it was not his lucky day. In an instant, the thugs completely surrounded Kaito, blocking any potential escape. One of the thugs informed Kaito that the road was closed and that he surely understood he'd need to pay a toll to pass. Annoyed by Kaito's silence, another thug asked if he was deaf, while Kaito inwardly sighed at the cliché situation. Furious at being ignored, one of the men charged forward, screaming at Kaito not to underestimate them. Effortlessly, Kaito ducked under the attack and prepared a powerful counter using his magically enhanced leg. The single sweeping kick sent the entire group flying, neutralizing them in an instant. With a pleased smile, Kaito noted that he'd pulled off the move perfectly and decided to check his status. After his battle, Kaito checked his status and was pleased to find he had acquired 2 new skills, haste and night vision. However, he noted with some concern that he couldn't seem to use his skills as freely as he once had. Just then, he caught one of the thugs attempting to flee and coldly asked where the man thought he was going, reminding him of his duty as their leader. As the thug screamed in agony from the cauterizing blade, Kaito expressed his delight that this method would keep his clothes clean. With a sadistic smile, he reasoned that this approach would conserve his MP, and since the thugs wouldn't bleed out, their suffering would be prolonged. Crying in absolute terror, the thug could only stammer that Kaito was a monster. The man was so terrified that he completely lost control of his bladder, a wet patch spreading across his pants. Utterly disgusted by the scene, Kaito pulled his blade free, commenting on how dirty the man was. He then declared with cold indifference that he wasn't interested in watching such a pathetic display. With a final, chilling farewell, Kaito grabbed the man's face, preparing to force his compliance. Soon after, the sounds of a desperate chase echoed through the slum's rooftops. Kaito relentlessly pursued the terrified thug, his footsteps pounding just behind him. Deciding on a new tactic, Kaito decided to hide for a moment to observe his quarry's destination. Meanwhile, the hooded thug, now identified as Jack, continued his panicked flight across the slate roofs. Overwhelmed by fear, Jack stumbled blindly through the narrow, grimy alleys of the slum. His desperate escape finally led him to a large, fortified door flanked by two gargoyle statues. As he approached, one of the stone guardians abruptly turned its head and demanded the password. Panting heavily, Jack gasped out the required phrase, "Trash heap's spare key," and the gargoyle permitted him to pass. He frantically shoved the heavy door open, seeking refuge within the hideout. Inside, one of his fellow gang members casually greeted him as Jack, asking why he was in such a rush. In a panic, Jack shouted that it was urgent and demanded to see the boss immediately. His comrade wondered what the commotion was about, asking if the kingdom's knights had arrived, but Jack brushed him off, saying he would explain later. Reaching the boss's private office, Jack knocked and announced his presence. From within, a calm voice simply told him to come in. Trembling with apprehension, Jack pushed the door handle and entered the room. The boss, a man with a monocle, stated without looking up from his documents that he couldn't be disturbed. Beneath the large desk, the boss's feet were visible, showing his relaxed and confident posture. Nervously, Jack confirmed that it was no problem and that he could wait. The boss, sensing this would be a long story, ordered the nervous Jack to sit down. Taking a seat, Jack began to stammer, trying to explain the terrifying events that had just transpired. After a moment, the boss looked up from his papers and calmly surmised that Jack had simply gotten careless. Jack could only respond with a confused grunt, stunned by his boss's casual dismissal of the danger. Suddenly, the office door was kicked off its hinges by Kaido, sent flying violently across the room. As Jack yelped in fear, Kaido calmly thanked the terrified thug for showing him the way. Stepping through the shattered doorway, Kaido gave a cheerful hello and asked if the man before him was the one who ruled the slum, holding up a defeated gargoyle's head. The boss noted that the door had been soundproofed and barricaded, but Kaido unapologetically explained that his hands had been busy disciplining some dogs, so he had to use his leg. Unfazed, the man introduced himself as Juff Fane Quill, stating that he was the one who managed the slum. Following his introduction, Fane calmly ordered Jack to leave the room. Jack, however, hesitated, looking toward his boss in protest, too scared to move. With a slight edge to his voice, Fane repeated the order, asking if Jack hadn't heard him. Reluctantly, Jack agreed, only to be unceremoniously thrown out of the room by Kaido. Kaido then turned back to Fane with a pleasant smile, politely asking how he could be of service. Fane stared back intently as Kaido explained that he simply needed a little help. With a sly grin, Kaido added that if Fane wanted to know his identity, it would cost an advance of 50 gold coins. To demonstrate his value, he revealed the ornate necklace he had taken from Princess Alicia. He then challenged Fane to make his highest bid for it, prompting the boss to request a closer look. Internally, Kaido reminded himself that this man, Juff Fane, was not on his revenge list, but merely a potential ally to be used. He confirmed to himself that their relationship would be nothing more than a simple transaction of give and take. Fane, inspecting the accessory, marveled at its splendid quality, noting that every magic stone was woven with first-class magic. Deeply impressed, he looked up with a smile and made his opening offer of 30 gold coins for the magnificent work of art. Adopting a threatening tone, Kaido warned the slumlord Fane not to play games with him at this crucial point. He confidently told Fane that he could surely profit from the deal, urging him not to make things more troublesome. With a menacing glare, Kaido warned that if Fane complicated things further, he shouldn't be blamed for what would happen next. In response, Fane completely changed his demeanor, smoothly apologizing for his earlier rudeness. With a renewed offer, Fane proposed giving Kaido 350 gold coins, promising an advance now and the rest tomorrow. Confidently, Fane stated that if Kaido ran off with the money, it would simply be a failure of his own ability to judge a person. Fane presented a pouch of coins as an advance payment, which Kaido calmly accepted. Kaido clutched the bag of gold tightly in his hand for a moment. Then, with a flick of his thumb, he tossed a single coin back onto Fane's desk. The slumlord watched the coin land, his expression turning serious once more. When Fane asked what the coin meant, Kaido explained that it was payment to repair everything he had broken earlier. With a taunting smirk, Kaido asked if this small gesture would also compromise Fane's vaunted ability to judge people. Amused, Fane thoughtfully recalled that Kaido had initially asked for a mere 50 gold coins for his identity. As he left, Kaido waved dismissively, declaring that his identity was no longer for sale. Left alone in his office, Fane leaned back in his chair, contemplating the strange encounter. A slow, deep chuckle escaped his lips as he tapped his fingers on the desk, thoroughly intrigued. He mused that it was precisely because unexpected things like this happened that his life was interesting. Suddenly, a small, ghost-like homunculus squeezed out of a hidden compartment, as Fane declared he wouldn't get bored with the slum. Meanwhile, having secured a room at an inn, Kaido collapsed onto the bed, utterly exhausted. However, before truly resting, he decided the first thing he needed to do was open his status window. To his dismay, he discovered he was still at level 1, confused why the gargoyles hadn't given him any experience. He clutched his head in frustration, recalling his encounter with the Earth Goddess. Kaido remembered she had warned him about reductions for passing the time limit, but this was far worse than he imagined. The system window revealed a shocking penalty. His current experience points were at negative 20,000. He sighed, realizing his powerful spirit sword skill was sealed and required a staggering 3,000 points to unlock. Deciding to assess his current abilities first, Kaido tapped on the Holy Sword of Vengeance skill. The skill's description explained that it raised his perception against ill will and malice directed towards him. Its unlocking conditions were twofold: being betrayed by trusted individuals and swearing heartfelt revenge against them. As he scrolled through the list of his abilities, Kaido finally began to understand the full scope of his powers. He then determined that his next step was to prepare the essential items he'd need after leaving town. With his plan in mind, Kaido carefully placed the enchanted necklace on a piece of paper. He then brought out his magic-adjusting hook blade and a case filled with lower-grade MP potions. As he prepared his tools, Kaido sighed, lamenting that it was a pity he couldn't personally witness the princess receiving his cursed gift. He admitted that while he didn't know the king and queen well, he was intensely curious to see how they would react. With a wicked grin, Kaido decided he would just have to ask that shitty Four Eyes for more help to see the results. A dark chuckle escaped him as he held the necklace, his mind filled with vengeful thoughts. Seated by candlelight, he began to hum a tune as he focused on his delicate and sinister work. Outside, the inn stood silently against the daytime sky. Lost in his task, Kaido's humming grew louder, his foot tapping rhythmically on the wooden floor. He continued to sing his little tune, completely absorbed in the act of creation and revenge. His expression turned to one of pure manic delight as he poured his focus into the necklace. With a final triumphant shout, he held the now glowing necklace aloft, declaring his work finished. Suddenly, a loud bang on the wall and an angry shout from the next room shattered his celebratory mood. In a flash of panic, Kaido realized that after so long, he had completely forgotten how to behave around other people in an inn. A new wave of horror struck him as he wondered if the thin walls meant his neighbor had heard his embarrassing humming too. As the neighbor yelled at him to shut up again, Kaido collapsed in on himself, utterly mortified by his own behavior. He knelt on his bed in ashamed silence, offering a quiet apology to the wall. Sweating with embarrassment, Kaido's triumphant mood was now completely gone. Feeling defeated, he sat on the edge of his bed and decided that perhaps he should just go to sleep. The scene then shifted to a quiet view of the town's rooftops, settling into the evening. The next morning, a flustered Ukai Kaido realized he had overslept for his important meeting in the slum. Upon his arrival, Kaido discovered that the entrance to the information broker's hideout was now guarded by two menacing gargoyle statues. With a calm smile, Kaido noted the reinforced security and correctly recited the required password. Instantly, one of the magical guardians recognized his words and granted him permission to pass. As he stepped inside, Kaido correctly deduced that the broker, Fane, had already warned his men of his impending arrival. Indeed, Fane's bodyguards were visibly on edge, startled by the sudden appearance of the young Avenger. Casually ascending the stairs, Kaido told the men not to be scared, assuring them he wouldn't kill anyone who didn't attack first. Upstairs, Fane Quill had the promised payment of 340 gold coins laid out on the table. In response to Fane's offer to count the money, Kaido confidently stated there was no need, as a petty man would never hold such a position. With business concluded, Kaido tossed the necklace to Fane, who thanked him for the successful transaction. However, as Fane inspected the item, a flicker of suspicion crossed his face. Turning it over in his hands, he realized with a jolt that the necklace had been fundamentally altered. Smirking, Kaido admitted that from the start, he had no intention of performing a high-risk move like directly negotiating with royalty. Feeling slightly bad, Kaido offered Fane 20 gold coins as compensation, with another 20 if he fulfilled a simple request. Uninterested in the gold, Fane instead demanded to know how Kaido could have made such a drastic change to the item overnight. Cheekily, Kaido deflected the question as a corporate secret and asked if Fane would take the new job or not. He then revealed his simple request for Fane to prepare another homunculus so Kaido could watch the events unfold in the castle. Citing the extreme risk, Fane countered Kaido's offer of 30 gold with a demand for 80. But Kaido framed it as a chance for Fane to prove his skills. The two haggled, with Kaido raising his offer to 50 and Fane lowering his demand to at least 70. After a moment, Fane glanced out the window and finally agreed to a price of 60 gold coins, deeming it low enough. Frustrated but satisfied, Kaido called the four-eyed broker a greedy bastard as their negotiation finally came to a close. Without missing a beat, Fane produced a small container, explaining that it was the receiver for the prying eye. Kaido was taken aback, asking in amazement how Fane could have the exact item he just requested ready so quickly. With a tired sigh, Kaido turned to leave, remarking that he hoped to never have to see the broker again. In stark contrast, Fane gave a pleasant smile, replying that he would personally not mind if Kaido came again. Muttering a curse, Kaido quickly departed from the broker's den. Now walking through the slum, Kaido felt confident that the broker would do his job properly and that the princess would wear the necklace without suspicion. A low, sinister chuckle escaped his lips as he relished his devious plan. With a wicked grin spreading across his face, he thought to himself how much he hoped his scheme would go well. Stretching his arms wide, Kaido exclaimed to the empty alley that living a life driven by vengeance felt truly great. His primary objective complete, Kaido now made his way towards another specific location within the city's underbelly. He carefully looked around the derelict streets, ensuring no one was following him to his destination. Soon his eyes landed upon a specific, unassuming door, marked with a peculiar crest. He confirmed that this was it, the hidden entrance to the city's notorious slave market. As the door chimed, a weary-looking man at the counter turned and welcomed Kaido into the establishment. Pleased to find no other customers, Kaido confirmed he was looking for slaves, prompting the trader to ask about his budget. After a moment of thought, Kaido stated that he wanted someone worth around 10 gold coins. The slave trader looked at the young man skeptically, questioning if he was really carrying that much money. Annoyed by the doubt, Kaido presented a pouch heavy with gold, which caused the trader's attitude to change completely. Suddenly eager, the trader led Kaido through a door into a grim hallway lined with the cells of slaves. As he walked, Kaido's internal monologue revealed his cold plan to use a slave for leveling up and as a form of camouflage. He reasoned that once he was done with them, he would simply give them some money and set them free. While the trader pointed to his prime recommendations, Kaido thought that the slaves should be able to live on their own afterward. In his mind, he coolly justified the entire endeavor as nothing more than a temporary, business-like partnership. Suddenly, as he scanned the cages, his eyes widened, locking onto a figure at the very end of the hall. In the last cell sat a young rabbit-eared girl, battered and chained, but whose defiant spirit remained visibly unbroken. The sight of this dirty but proud beastman girl resonated deeply with the young Avenger. Without hesitation, Kaido pointed directly at the girl's cell and asked the trader about her. The trader replied dismissively, calling her the bunny girl and explaining they planned to deal with her soon. He further elaborated that she was brought for a noble, but her hostile personality made her impossible to tame. Ignoring the slave trader's warning about her being a beastman, Kaido declared that he had decided and would take that one. Understanding this was Kaido's first time, the trader explained that they would first need to register his master crest. He further elaborated that the crest would allow Kaido to control his slave by inflicting intense pain with his mana. Without hesitation, Kaido put the quill to the contract, signing his name with a swift flick of his wrist. Instantly, a surge of magical energy enveloped him as the contract activated with a powerful whoosh. In a brilliant shine of light, an intricate magical seal burned itself onto the back of his hand. Just as quickly as it appeared, the intense light from the crest dimmed, leaving a permanent mark. Simultaneously, a system message informed Kaido that the slaver's whip blade had been unlocked, a detail he decided to check later. With the transaction complete, Kaido approached the cell and pushed open the creaking iron bars. Inside, he found the rabbit-eared girl, Minaris, kneeling in defeat, chained and shackled. With a rattle of chains, he reached down and grabbed a handful of her hair. Her ankles were also bound by a heavy chain and ball, preventing any chance of escape. Despite her condition, Minaris was wheezing with ragged breaths, her spirit clearly unbroken. With a sharp pull, Kaido forced her head up so he could see her face. As he stared into her eyes, he thought to himself that it was just as he suspected. He then coolly remarked that she truly possessed beautiful, defiant eyes. Furious at his touch, Minaris thrashed against her restraints, screaming for the filthy human not to touch her. In response, Kaido calmly pressed his new master crest against her cheek, causing it to spark with power. A crippling wave of magical pain immediately coursed through her body, forcing an agonized scream from her lips. After the torment subsided, she slumped forward, panting and trembling from the ordeal. While she was still reeling, Kaido forced a potion into her mouth as she struggled helplessly. He then stated that with this, they should be able to have a more productive conversation. Looking down at her tear-streaked face, he asked a single chilling question: who she wanted to kill. Kaido maintained his cold, unwavering stare, patiently awaiting her response. Crouching down to her level, he then asked more specifically who was the one she wanted to take revenge on. His words immediately triggered a painful memory, sending Minaris' mind back to a snowy forest. In this memory, she was trekking through the deep snow, lamenting that they couldn't find any food. Her friend Lucia apologized to Minaris, equally frustrated that their long search had been fruitless. Lucia then expressed deep regret for ever suggesting they make a birthday feast for Carol. However, Minaris reassured her friend, admitting she also wanted to celebrate his birthday. Suddenly, a distinct rustle from the nearby bushes interrupted their conversation. A powerful shudder of fear ran through Minaris as a sense of foreboding washed over her. Looking up at the menacingly tall trees, she realized just how deep they had ventured. Nervously, Minaris pointed out to Lucia that they had walked much deeper into the forest than they were supposed to. Lucia fell into a worried silence, confirming Minaris' fears were justified. Trying to stay positive, Minaris agreed they hadn't found anything and suggested it was probably time to turn back. Just as Lucia was about to agree, her gaze fixed on something in the distance. She let out a sudden gasp of surprise, pointing excitedly past the trees. With a huge smile of relief, Lucia thanked God and exclaimed that she had found a fruit tree. She began to say that their long journey so far had not been in vain after all. But her triumphant words were cut short by a sudden, horrified gasp. Minaris' face also filled with terror as she stared at what was lurking by the tree. To their absolute horror, a grotesque goblin was already there, greedily munching on the fruit. Lucia identified the creature as an ice goblin, a monster infamous for its intelligence and brutality. Quickly, Minaris urged Lucia to calm down so they could retreat slowly, noting that the goblin hadn't noticed them yet. Tragically, in her panic, Lucia tripped and let out a terrified shriek. A look of pure dread crossed Minaris' face as she realized their cover was blown. The ice goblin turned its head, its cheeks still stuffed with half-eaten fruit. Its brutish features then twisted into a vile, lecherous grin as it spotted the two girls. In that horrifying moment of realization, Minaris knew the creature had found them. In a snowy forest, a young Lucia suddenly tripped and cried out in pain as Minaris rushed towards her. Before she could reach her, a vicious ice goblin appeared from the trees, lunging toward the helpless Lucia. Terrified, Lucia screamed that she didn't want to die, a plea that froze Minaris in place as she recalled her mother's voice. In a vivid memory, Minaris remembered her mother gently casting an illusion spell over her head. With a bright smile, a much younger Minaris had thanked her mother for magically hiding her bunny ears. Her mother, Maris, had warmly promised to teach Minaris illusion magic herself when she was a little older. More seriously, Maris made Minaris promise never to use her beastman powers outside, as it would break the spell. When Minaris had asked why it was wrong, her mother sadly began to explain how cruel people could be. Haunted by the memory, Maris could only trail off, remarking that even a slight difference in appearance was enough to cause trouble. Torn from her thoughts by Lucia's scream, Minaris ignored the warning and launched a powerful kick at the goblin. The immense force of the blow sent the monster flying backward into a tree with a pained grunt. Without a second's hesitation, the stunned goblin scrambled to its feet and fled deeper into the woods. Watching it retreat into the distance, Minaris finally let out a shaky sigh of relief. Immediately, she rushed to Lucia's side, anxiously asking her friend if she was hurt anywhere. As Lucia looked up, Minaris instinctively touched her own head, realizing her rabbit ears were now fully exposed. With a pained expression, Minaris apologized to Lucia for not revealing her secret sooner. Desperately, she then bowed her head to the ground and pleaded with Lucia not to tell anyone what she saw. Stunned by the sudden revelation, Lucia could only stammer in response. With a relieved smile, Minaris looked up as Lucia shakily agreed to keep her secret. Later, back in the village, Minaris went to visit her own ailing mother, Maris, who was sick in bed. Kneeling beside the bed, Minaris offered a sincere apology for what had happened in the forest. With a kind smile, Maris reassured Minaris that it was okay, since she had done the right thing and saved her friend. Conflicted, Minaris was left wondering if using her power to save Lucia had truly been wrong after all. The scene then shifted to the snowy village under a gray sky, setting a deeply somber tone. That night, Minaris was shaken awake by her mother, who urgently ordered her to wake up and come with her. In a confused daze, Minaris was forcefully dragged from her home, asking what was happening. To her horror, she was brought before the entire village, who had gathered around her kneeling mother, Maris. Initially, the young girl wondered if this was somehow her punishment for entering the forbidden forest. Her confusion then turned to dread, as she questioned why her own mother was being judged alongside her. From the crowd, a grim village elder stepped forward and addressed both Minaris and Maurice by name. With a cold, accusatory voice, the elder asked them if it was true that they were both bunny beastmen. Utterly stunned, Minaris's mind raced as she wondered how their deepest secret could have been exposed. As Minaris watched in fear, her mother reached up and placed her hands on her own head. With a faint shimmer, the illusion magic that had concealed her true identity began to shatter. In an instant, Marissa's long rabbit ears appeared for all the villagers to see. Minaris cried out her mother's name as the villagers began to murmur in shock and fear. The crowd reacted with disbelief and disgust, realizing the rumors about them being beastmen were actually true. Through it all, the elder continued to watch with a stern, unforgiving expression, his judgment already passed. Completely terrified, Minaris huddled behind her mother, trembling with fear. Bowing her head in submission, Maris admitted they were indeed bunny beastmen and begged for forgiveness for deceiving them. Minaris remained frozen in place, paralyzed by the sudden and hostile turn of events. Turning his gaze away, the elder cruelly announced that it seemed what Lucia said had been the truth after all. In utter disbelief, Minaris whipped her head around and called out Lucia's name, her voice filled with shock. Spotting her friend standing with the other villagers, Minaris desperately yelled that Lucia must be lying. With tears streaming down her face, she demanded to know why Lucia had broken her promise to not tell anybody. Cowering behind a boy, Lucia whimpered in fear, gripping his coat and calling out the name Carol. Minaris stared back at the scene, her expression one of pure, unadulterated shock at the betrayal. Gently, the boy named Carol held the trembling Lucia, telling her to calm down and that it was okay. He then glared at Minaris with contempt, declaring he wouldn't let her bully Lucia and expressing his deep disappointment. Furious, Carol shouted that he had heard everything from Lucia, accusing Minaris of bullying her friend and using her powers as a threat. With a cruel smirk, Lucia accused Minaris of using her beastman power to threaten and silence her, claiming she had been crying all night. Utterly bewildered, Minaris could only stare back in the stunned silence, unable to comprehend the blatant lie. In that moment, her mother fell to her knees before the village elder, desperately pleading for them to let her daughter go. The devoted mother insisted she didn't care what happened to her, as long as they spared Minaris. Infuriated, the village elder roared at the woman, telling her not to joke with him. He then violently flung Minaris's mother to the ground, spitting the words "dirty beast man" at her. Suddenly, the crowd's fear turned to hatred as they began pelting the two with stones, screaming that they had been deceived. Terrified, Minaris threw herself over her mother's body, trying to shield her while begging the villagers to stop. The mob's fury only grew as her childhood friend, Carol, joined in, shouting for the animal people to get out of their village. Wincing in agony, Minaris felt the sharp sting of the stones hitting her back. Meanwhile, Carol clutched his chest, feigning a pained heart as he watched the scene unfold. Behind the crowd, Lucia watched the brutal assault with a cold, triumphant satisfaction hidden behind her hand. Minaris's eyes widened in horror as the crushing realization of her best friend's betrayal finally struck her. Pinned to the ground, her mind raced as she desperately questioned just why this was happening to her. Her entire world had collapsed into chaos, and she could not understand what was happening at all. As the stoning continued, Minaris looked back one last time, her eyes filled with tearful, pleading despair. Just then, a hunting party returned to the village, stopping in their tracks as they stared at the horrific scene. Seeing the lead hunter, both Minaris and her mother cried out for their father, who looked on in absolute shock. Overwhelmed with terror and disbelief, the man let out a powerful scream of denial. To save himself, he stood apart from the crowd and declared that he had nothing to do with the beastmen and never knew a thing. Minaris's heart shattered as she witnessed the ultimate betrayal from the one person she thought would save them. In a final act of cowardice, her father pointed an accusing finger, screaming that he too had been deceived by that filthy animal. With that, a profound crack echoed through her soul as her entire world was irrevocably broken. Kneeling in the dirt, completely numb, Minaris questioned the very reality she now found herself in. Bound and defeated, she was sold to a slave trader who casually remarked on his purchase of beastmen. Her father simply agreed that it was fine, callously noting that they were nothing but cheap goods. Thrown into the back of a cart, Minaris could only reflect on how her world had been completely broken into pieces. Beside her, she found her mother's unconscious body and desperately tried to wake her. However, the slave trader decided the spot was good enough and callously dumped her mother's limp body from the moving cart. When Minaris protested, the man silenced her with a brutal kick that sent her reeling. Tears streamed down her face as she reached out a trembling hand, crying out for the mother she had just lost. From their corner of the dark wagon, two other captives noted with detached pity that she was getting beaten again. The slave trader grabbed her by the hair, mocking her for being so fragile when she was supposed to be a beastman. Sighing in annoyance, the trader later complained that her mother had died selfishly without any thought for his troubles. He cursed his bad luck, furious that he had to lose money because of an incompetent beastman. Left alone in the darkness, Minaris was consumed by a single agonizing question about what mistake she could have possibly made. Her mind flashed back to happier times with Lucia, wondering where exactly their friendship had gone so wrong. As she questioned whose fault this tragedy was, a dark and insidious feeling began to crawl into her heart. This new emotion was alien to her, a twisting sensation that she couldn't quite identify. Her despair spiraled as she questioned her very existence, asking why she was born just to be turned into something so twisted. Gazing at her own reflection, the answer finally came to her. She hated them, and she wanted to break everything. This simple hatred quickly morphed into a maelstrom of violent urges to crush, burn, and kill them all. The slave trader's voice cut through her dark thoughts, angrily asking why she was dazing around. In an explosion of pure rage, something inside her finally snapped, and a silent scream for vengeance echoed in her mind. From that moment on, Minaris no longer obeyed a single order, enduring brutal beatings as the trader screamed at the animal who dared defy a human. Yet even as she suffered, she knew that the twisted flame of hatred burning inside her body would never forgive him. It was then that Kaido appeared, holding her chin and remarking that she had beautiful eyes. Though she dismissed him as another cruel noble, she found herself deeply and inexplicably attracted to the look in his eyes. Her flashback ended, returning her to the present, where Kaido knelt before her and asked just who she wanted to take revenge on. Finally, Minaris looked up, her spirit no longer broken but reforged in the fires of an unquenchable vengeance. Kaido listened with a cold, calculating gaze as the captive girl began her tale. Consumed by hatred, she listed every person who had wronged her, from her own father to the entire village. With a chilling smirk, Kaido asked if her ambition was merely to kill them. Her eye flaring with rage, Minaris roared that such a simple end would never be enough. She thrashed against her chains, screaming that she wouldn't be satisfied until she had tortured, broken, and utterly destroyed them. Seeing the depths of her desire, Kaido offered her a second path, suggesting she become his comrade in arms. He then snorted, correcting his choice of words with a sly grin. Instead, Kaido proposed that she become his accomplice, a partner who would savor the sweet poison of vengeance alongside him. To seal this dark offer, Kaido gathered a swirling sphere of black energy in the palm of his hand. He then unleashed the power, which materialized into a menacing sword that embedded itself in the floor before her. The weapon was identified as the legendary Holy Sword of Vengeance. Kaido grasped the hilt, its immense power crackling under his control. Particles of dark energy danced in the air, signifying the sword's unholy nature. Awestruck, Minaris could only stare at the sword, sensing its profound power. Kaido explained that the sword would bind them in a magical contract, forcing them to share their respective revenge targets. He clarified that through this pact, she would come to despise his enemies just as he would come to despise hers. As an added benefit, he told her that the contract might even grant her unique skills suited for her new purpose. Kaido then fell silent, observing her intently as he awaited her crucial decision. Hardened by countless betrayals, Minaris cautiously asked if he would eventually turn on her as well. He reassured her with a confident smile, stating that their contract was absolute and not like a weak verbal promise. Kaido then cheerfully added that while she was free to refuse, he would be truly happy if she became his accomplice. Completely bewildered by his strange enthusiasm, Minaris could only ask why. His face contorting into a mask of joyful madness, Kaito explained that having a partner allowed for much more creative and enjoyable vengeances. He spread his arms wide, declaring that he had no use for anyone who was satisfied with simply killing people. At his words, Minaris erupted into a fit of unrestrained, maniacal laughter. She gleefully proclaimed that the endless black flame of revenge in her heart was the best feeling she had ever known. Seeing that they were now kindred spirits, Kaito calmly invited her to take the sword. Without a single moment of hesitation, Minaris reached out and took hold of the hilt. Immediately, ribbons of dark energy erupted from the blade, sealing the pact between the two Avengers. As the power settled, Kaito formally introduced himself as Ukai Kaito, to which she responded that her name was Minaris. He smiled warmly, officially welcoming his new little accomplice, Minaris, to the path of vengeance. Through the sword's powerful connection, the pain and memory of Kaito's betrayal instantly flooded Minaris' mind. In turn, Kaito now understood the depths of Minaris' obsession as he felt the full weight of her suffering. He stared at his hand, processing the foreign yet familiar waves of hatred that now belonged to him as well. The dark link between them fully solidified, merging their pasts into a single, shared purpose. Looking upon Minaris' imprisoned tormentors, Kaito finally understood how the revenge-sharing power truly worked. A dark aura washed over the scene, marking the official completion of their supernatural contract. A system message then appeared, confirming to Kaito that Minaris had successfully become the Avenger's servant. Overcome with excitement, Minaris gasped that with this new power, she could achieve things beyond her wildest dreams. Intrigued by her potential, Kaito commanded her status window to open for his inspection. He quickly noted that her base stats were impressively high and that she had indeed acquired a unique skill. Now burning with purpose, Minaris eagerly demanded to begin her first act of vengeance immediately. In response, Kaito instructed her to prepare anything she needed while he went to hunt down the escaped slave trader. As Minaris went to work, the other captive slaves watched nervously from behind the bars of their cage. She began preparing a suspicious amount of food, her movements methodical and eerie. With a blank expression, she stirred a large bowl, her mind clearly focused on the revenge to come. Shortly after, Kaito returned to the room, nonchalantly dragging the captured slave trader with him. Minaris thanked her new master profusely and asked him to throw the man inside the cage with the others. The traitor was tossed unceremoniously onto the floor, where he landed groaning next to another terrified captive. Upon regaining his senses, the foolish man began to threaten Kaito, completely oblivious to the horrific fate that awaited him. With her first act of revenge complete, Minaris triumphantly declared that it was done. However, the magical exertion left Minaris dizzy, prompting Kaito to explain that she'd simply overused her MP. Blushing, Minaris cheekily asked her master if he could give her the recovery potion with a kiss, an offer Kaito immediately refused. Thoroughly annoyed, Kaito asked why she was acting like this, stating he wasn't hungry enough for affection to do that with an overly excited drunkard. Losing his patience entirely, Kaito shouted for her to shut up and drink as he forcefully grabbed her face. Without another word, he jammed the potion bottle into her mouth, pouring the contents down her throat. Held firmly in his grip, Minaris had no choice but to swallow the restorative liquid. After recovering, she let out a sigh and told Kaito with a sultry smile that he was so mean. Energized, Minaris cheerfully brought out plates of food, prompting an irritated Kaito to demand she bring the main dishes already. Her playful demeanor then vanished as she ominously approached the cage holding the remaining slaves. With a sweet smile, Minaris presented a massive feast she made herself, telling the terrified prisoners not to be shy and to eat up. Her eyes then locked onto one man in particular, asking him how he would enjoy being the first to taste her cooking. Her voice turned cold as she began to remind him of their shared past on the journey to this town. With a terrifying glare, she accused him of looking down on her and her mother like they were filthy garbage. A sinister aura then erupted from her body as she activated her new skill, the illusion flame of Poison Demon, meant to delude and devour. A thin, ethereal tendril of dark magic began to snake its way towards its horrified target. The man let out a terrified shriek as the illusionary flame enveloped him, screaming and asking what was happening to him. The invisible magic continued its assault, seeping into his mind and twisting his perception of reality. Completely overwhelmed by the mental attack, the man screamed desperately for her to stop the unbearable torment. Finally, his will shattered, and he collapsed to the floor with a pained groan as his mind succumbed to the spell. The other prisoners could only watch in stunned silence, their faces pale with abject terror. Suddenly, the fallen man began to scream with an unnatural and all-consuming hunger begging for food. Driven mad by the magical craving, he thrashed violently against his chains, desperate to reach the feast. Breaking free, he lunged at the table and began to devour the food with the ferocity of a wild beast. Observing the grotesque scene, Minaris commented with a wry smile that the poison was far stronger than she had anticipated. She then turned her attention to the others, promising to control the dosage better as she made them all the same. Once again, Minaris unleashed her illusion flame of poison demon, ready to delude and devour the remaining slaves. Insidious wisps of her dark magic spread throughout the cage, reaching for their next terrified victims. The remaining prisoners gasped in unison as the illusionary spell began to take hold of their minds. One by one, they cried out in agony as the same artificial hunger started to gnaw away at their sanity. In moments, their eyes went blank with madness as they were all consumed by a single overwhelming desire for food. One of the men drooled uncontrollably, his humanity completely erased by Minaris's cruel and powerful magic. Minaris watched with cold satisfaction as all the prisoners descended into a chaotic frenzy, stuffing their faces with the poisoned feast. Standing just outside the bars, she looked down on the writhing mass with a sinister smile and declared how truly pitiful they were. She leaned in close to her first victim, tauntingly asking if he agreed that he was now far more pitiful than her mother ever was. With his mind completely broken, the man could only continue to eat, whimpering between mouthfuls of food. Still unsatisfied with his suffering, Minaris whispered for him to become even more unsightly for her. As the man screamed, his arm began to twist, and she cooed that she hoped he would get broken already. The sound of cracking bones filled the air as his arm gruesomely morphed into the green-clawed limb of a goblin. The man stared at his newly transformed hand in utter disbelief and confusion, unable to comprehend the change. A deep groan of agony escaped his lips as the horrifying transformation continued to spread throughout his body. Amidst his suffering, Minaris simply smiled sweetly and encouraged him to eat a lot more. She then giggled, revealing that the more they ate, the faster they would turn into goblins, a fate she deemed perfectly fine for them. With a crazed, triumphant expression, she demanded to know how the so-called ladies and gentlemen felt now that they'd fallen lower than the beastmen they despised. Horrified by this revelation, one of the last remaining humans tried desperately to fight the urge to eat. He panted heavily, telling himself that he must not give in, but the magical hunger was proving to be overwhelming. Meanwhile, Minaris contemptuously stepped on the back of another prisoner, holding a plate of food just out of his reach. With a cruel chuckle, she mocked him, saying it seemed he couldn't get her food out of his mind and that he could eat more if he wanted. The constant consumption of the cursed food finally took its toll, as another man's body contorted and he roared, fully transforming into a goblin. With feigned surprise, Minaris commented on how fast he had become a goblin, as the new monster continued its mindless feasting. With a radiant smile, Minaris marveled at how quickly her victims had transformed into goblins. She then expressed her sincere gladness that they had enjoyed her cooking so much. In a brief flashback, she recalled preparing the special meal for her captors. She cruelly revealed her food's secret, explaining that it became a lethal poison when monsters ate it in large amounts. Stepping forward, she condescendingly asked the groaning creatures if they were still with her. She then mocked them, doubting they could speak like humans anymore, outside of their nonsensical goblin groans. In a fit of pure rage, Minaris demanded they die in the most pathetic way, suffering just as her mother had. Letting out a peal of maniacal laughter, she watched the goblins continue to compulsively eat the poison. At last, the goblins' bodies gave out, and they collapsed lifelessly among the shattered plates. From outside the cage, Kaito watched the horrific scene unfold with a suppressed chuckle. With a chilling smile, he praised Minaris aloud, calling her revenge a truly beautiful work of art. He then mused to himself that choosing her as his accomplice was not a mistake after all. Kneeling amidst the carnage, Minaris clasped her hands together, feeling a sense of finality. With a peaceful expression, she whispered to her deceased mother that she had finally avenged her. Her first act of vengeance complete, Kaito calmly informed Minaris that it was time for them to leave. Minaris turned to her master, proclaiming that she was forever indebted to him for allowing her this sweet revenge. However, Kaito dismissed her thanks, reminding her that they were accomplices who shared the same drive for vengeance. Minaris insisted that even so, it was an undeniable fact that he had given her this chance to avenge her mom. She recalled how she had once been helpless, merely waiting for death despite the flame of hatred burning inside her. She explained that after sharing everything with Kaito, She now understood that this desire for revenge was truly her own. Driven by this realization, she closed the distance between them and held onto his arm. With an intense, flushed expression, she offered her master her body, heart, and time. Everything except her own quest for vengeance. Completely flustered by her passionate advance, Kaido pushed her away and told her to calm down. He rationalized her odd behavior as her beast-man instincts going awry from her MP-drunk state, believing she would return to normal soon. With a grim look, Kaido declared that their shared revenge had only just begun. Privately, he began to sweat, worrying that things would be very difficult if she acted this way all the time. The pair then exited the building into a desolate back alleyway. The ruined state of their surrounding set a grim tone for the journey ahead. As they prepared to move, Kaido asked Minaris if she could hide her prominent ears and tail. Minaris confirmed she had recovered enough MP and began to cast her illusion magic with a simple gesture. A swirl of magical energy flowed around her legs as her tail vanished from sight. Kaido noted with surprise that she had cast the spell without any incantation. With a proud smile, Minaris patted her now normal-looking head, confident that she had done well. Kaido stared at her silently for a moment, his mind racing with curiosity. Suddenly, he gave in to his impulse and grabbed the top of her head where her ears used to be. Minaris let out a startled shriek, completely caught off guard by her master's action. Giving a thumbs up, Kaido excitedly remarked on how fluffy her invisible ears felt, just like a real rabbit's. Mortified, a blushing Minaris pleaded with him to stop, especially not in a public place. Kaido's face contorted with a mix of excitement and the sudden realization of his blunder. He immediately let go and apologized profusely, explaining that he was just really curious. After composing himself, Kaido cleared his throat and stated he hadn't yet told her what they were doing next. He then revealed his plan to leave the town that very day and instructed her to prepare. This conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter in their tale, the escape from the royal capital. Minaris was stunned by the suddenness of the plan, questioning if they really had to leave today. Kaido reminded her that she had already seen his numerous vengeance targets through their shared memories. He explained that since his own power was still far from enough, they had no leeway to dawdle in this town. The mention of shared memories prompted Minaris to ask just how much of her past he had witnessed. She recalled seeing pieces of his strange memories as well, wondering if he was a ghost, the hero, or the world's enemy. Putting her many questions aside for now, Minaris readily agreed, suggesting they buy what they needed and leave at once. Kaido clarified that there was no need to be in such a hurry, as he was planning for them to leave at night. With their pact fresh in his mind, Kaido admitted his surprise that Minaris had so easily accepted him as an enemy of the royal family. Thoughtfully, Minaris conceded that she had certainly been surprised when she first found out the truth. However, with a newfound resolve, she reminded Kaido that they had already decided to make their enemies live a living hell, no matter the target. Hearing this, Kaido acknowledged that even if his target was the royal family, it didn't really change anything for her. With a small laugh, Kaido apologized for asking something so ridiculous, accepting her unwavering loyalty. Genuinely moved, Kaido confessed that he was really glad to have her as his accomplice on this dark path. In response, Minaris beamed with happiness, telling him she was also truly happy that he had chosen her. Now that business was settled, Kaido noted that she seemed to have sobered up and declared their need for new clothes, rations, and weapons. Worried, Minaris pointed out a flaw in their plan, questioning how they would get out of town with the gates shut at night. Confidently, Kaido revealed his secret, explaining they would use a weak spot in the town walls that would crumble easily. Later, dressed in a new outfit, a hesitant Minaris asked if it was really all right for her to receive such nice clothes. Kaido casually dismissed her concerns, stating that it was fine because the clothes weren't particularly expensive. He then explained his practical motive, telling the pretty Minaris that she would attract unwanted attention from trash nobles if she dressed like a slave. Completely stunned by the compliment, Minaris blushed furiously and unconsciously crushed a small item in her hand. Noticing her stammering reaction, Kaido turned and asked her what was wrong. Leaning in closer, a concerned Kaido asked if her body was feeling weird again. Trying to hide her embarrassment, Minaris quickly reassured him, blaming her dizziness on leveling up from the goblin fight. With a strained smile, she confidently asserted that she was sure she would be fine by tomorrow. Observing her flushed face, Kaido saw through her lie, deciding he would buy her medicine and force it down her throat if necessary. Without another word, he led them towards a small shop marked by a simple wooden sign. Moments later, Kaido presented Minaris with a potion, telling her to drink it as it was effective against dizziness. Waving her hands in protest, Minaris insisted she was fine and couldn't accept such an expensive potion from him. Frustrated by her hesitation, Kaido suddenly barked at her to shut up and drink, ordering her not to make things more troubling. Startled into compliance, Minaris apologized meekly and promised to drink the potion right away. Once she was finished, Kaido declared that they would head to the weapon shop next. As they walked, Kaido pondered what kind of weapon he should get for Minaris, since he already had his spirit sword. Recalling her heritage, he noted that Beastman's magic was suitable for melee fights and asked if she had any weapon experience. Minaris then recalled her past, explaining that the only thing she learned was how to swing a sword from adventurers who visited her village. Ashamed of her limited skills, she apologized profusely to her master for her weakness. Kaido, however, stopped her, questioning why she was apologizing and stating that he never chose her for her strength. He then clarified his true intention, telling her that he just needed her to be his accomplice. Finally spotting their destination down the cobblestone street, Kaido announced that they had arrived. Before them stood a small, unassuming weapon shop dwarfed by the buildings on either side. As they entered, a young boy carrying a crate informed them that the shop was about to close for the day. From the back, an angry man yelled for his son to just drive them away, but Kaido interjected that he already knew what he wanted. The boy shouted back to his father that the customers wouldn't take long and urged him to just sell them something quickly. Turning back to Kaido, the flustered boy asked how he could help, prompting Kaido to order 2 sets of adventurer's armor and 4 maintenance kits. As a final request, Kaido added 10 mass-produced swords and their sheaths to the already large order. Taken aback by the sheer volume of equipment, the young shopkeeper let out a gasp of surprise. Recovering from his shock, the boy confirmed that they had all the items in stock and asked them to wait a minute. He then quickly placed all the requested gear on the counter and confirmed if that was everything they needed. The boy then struggled to calculate the final price, getting confused while converting between silver and copper coins. Suddenly, his angry father emerged from the back and smacked the boy hard on the head for his slowness. Furious, the father screamed at his useless son, demanding to know how long he would take and telling him to just finish the bill. The familiar scene triggered a dark memory for Kaido, recalling a time when Princess Alicia had asked about that specific weapon shop owner and his son. In the flashback, a younger Kaido naively explained to the princess that the family had a bit of dwarf ancestry in their bloodline. Upon hearing this information, Princess Alicia's expression had twisted into a faint, sinister smirk. The memory then jumped to Kaido, thinking about what Alicia had said regarding those with dwarven blood. With a look of pure disgust, Alicia had declared how repulsive it was that monsters acting like humans existed in her kingdom. The flashback ended with a horrified Kato realizing the weight of his words, as Alicia had thanked him for helping her uncover this truth. A dark memory surfaced in Kaido's mind, showing a smiling Princess Alicia thanking him for helping her eliminate the trash in her kingdom. Noticing his sudden distress, Minaris gently asked her master if there was something wrong. Kaido quickly brushed it off as nothing, just as the shop owner offered to help Minaris equip her new armor. Stepping in, Kaido began tightening the straps on Minaris' chest plate himself. Suddenly, Kaido paused, his expression hardening with clear irritation. In response to the shop owner's lewd thumbs up, an enraged Kaido told the perverted old man to shut his mouth. He then furiously questioned why the owner couldn't show some restraint in front of his own son. Having finished their preparations, Kaido politely apologized to the owner for the intrusion as they prepared to depart. As a form of apology, Kaido offered to give the man a valuable piece of advice. With a knowing smile, Kaido cryptically warned that there would be a sudden price jump on antidotes and suggested stocking up. The owner laughed it off but assured Kaido that he would keep the strange advice in mind. Under his breath, Kaido then quietly apologized for the tragic events of the first cycle. When the confused owner asked what he had just said, Kaido cheerfully claimed he was just speaking to himself. Bidding farewell, the duo waved goodbye and headed out into the city streets. Outside, Minaris offered to carry the weapons, but Kaido gently reminded her that he didn't want anyone to know she was a slave. She argued back, pointing out that even ordinary people help their companions with luggage. However, Kaido explained that letting a girl carry all his baggage while he walked empty-handed would only make them stand out. He further added that as accomplices, it would bother him if she didn't see herself as his equal. With their preparations complete, Kaido announced that their next destination was the town walls. Their path took them through the derelict outskirts of the capital, Donning their hoods, Minaris recognized their surroundings and nervously asked her master about the area. Kaido confirmed her fears, explaining they were at the border between the prosperous town and the slums. With a sinister grin, he elaborated that this place was filled with desperate people who would betray anyone to avoid poverty. They proceeded deeper into the desolate and forgotten alleyways. Finally, Kaido stopped against a large stone wall and declared that they had arrived at their destination. Confused, Minaris saw no escape route, but Kaido confidently told her to wait as he was about to make the wall crumble. Skeptically, Minaris reminded him that this very wall had once endured the attack of an A-ranked monster. In response, Kaido began his lesson by asking her if she knew why the town walls were so durable in the first place. He revealed that all town walls were enchanted with properties like self-regeneration, reinforced strength, and magic damage reduction. The key, he explained, was a magical item called a starlight stone embedded within the wall, which absorbed mana to power the enchantments. Therefore, Kaido reasoned that if they removed that stone, the magically reinforced wall would revert to plain, breakable rock. With his plan laid bare, Kaido drew his sword and prepared to strike a precise point on the ground. He plunged the blade into the earth, shattering the ground at the base of the wall. Minaris watched intently as Kaido revealed his grotesque secret weapon for the task. From his bag, he unveiled a horrifying swarm of writhing maggots, explaining that these creatures did more than just eat mana. Observing their behavior, Minaris correctly deduced that the creatures were eating the wall and the stone itself. Kaido confirmed her guess, identifying the creatures as all-eaters, a subspecies that used a special mucus to melt and devour minerals containing mana. He casually added that they were actually a newly discovered species that hadn't even been officially named yet. He demonstrated how the creatures made the stone wall incredibly fragile, making it simple to create a hole. Seeing Minaris' quiet contemplation, Kaido mistakenly assumed the gruesome sight was too much for a girl to handle. However, Minaris shattered his assumption by coldly asking if the maggots could melt human flesh, musing on the fun of watching someone suffer. Thoroughly impressed, Kaido replied that while they couldn't, he proposed the alternative of breeding the mana-eating creatures inside a living person's body. Minaris eagerly agreed, suggesting it would be far more satisfying to watch their enemies get eaten from the inside out. With a gleefully sadistic smile, she added that they could even scrape the maggots out periodically just to show the victim their horrifying progress. Having successfully created an exit, the two accomplices finally stepped out from the royal capital into the surrounding wilderness. With a sigh of relief, Kaido confirmed that they were finally out of the city. Before moving on, Kaido decided to cover their escape route with wood, and Minaris quickly offered her assistance. He then asked Minaris how long her illusion magic could hide the hole, to which she replied it would only last for a day once she moved too far away. Deciding that was insufficient, Kaido determined that simple wood planks would be good enough, doubting that desperate locals would even notice. After a moment of contemplation, Kaido suddenly seemed to remember another crucial detail of his plan. With his escape complete, Kaido paused to gather some of the unique mana-eating maggots from the ground. Deciding they might prove useful later, he carefully stored a few of the creatures in a small vial. After successfully concealing their exit, Kaido informed Minaris that they would head to an abandoned hunter's cabin deep in the forest. Under the light of the full moon, the duo formally began their shared journey down the path of vengeance. As they walked, Kaido explained that their immediate goal was to reach the shed so Minaris could recover from her debilitating weakness. He insisted that fighting with halved stats was foolish, adding that it would be a waste of her beauty, which he considered a tactical advantage. Flustered by the compliment, Minaris replied that his flattery was pointless, as her loyalty as his slave was already absolute. Kaido noted her blush and mused that he sounded like a sleazebag, a word Minaris overheard with great confusion. Innocently, Minaris then asked her master to explain what a sleazebag was, putting him in an awkward position. Frustrated with himself, Kaido struggled to find the right words to define such a complicated concept for her. Putting the conversation aside, they finally arrived at a small, isolated cabin in a forest clearing. With a heavy creak, Kaido pushed open the door, revealing the dark interior of their new shelter. Inside, they found a simple but dusty room, clearly left untouched for many years. Noticing the thick cobwebs covering the corners, Kaido realized what their first task must be. He declared that before they could rest, they would have to do a thorough cleaning. After working together, they managed to make the dusty cabin feel much more habitable. His duty as her master now turning to care, Kaido handed Minaris a potion and instructed her to rest. He firmly insisted that she should not worry and focus entirely on regaining her strength. With a bow of her head, Minaris dutifully accepted his command. By the following day, Kaido was already back in the forest, ruthlessly dispatching a goblin. He stood over a pile of fresh corpses, his expression cold and focused on his goal. Wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, he decided that his hunt for the day was complete. Back at the cabin, Kaido explained to Minaris that it was time to readjust their shared desire for revenge, as their pact had only shown a summary of the truth. He then asked Minaris if she would be willing to tell him her full story, to which she solemnly agreed. With an expression of pure, unadulterated hatred, Minaris began to recount her tragic past. She detailed every betrayal and named all the targets who fueled her burning need for retribution. Even long after her heartbreaking tale had concluded, a heavy silence filled the room. Kaido found himself completely unable to speak, clenching his fists in silent, seething rage at what she'd endured. He understood that no matter how angry he was on her behalf, there were some things he could not offer her. In that moment, he realized that for a woman like her, pity would be just another form of mockery. Instead of sympathy, he offered solidarity, declaring that her revenge had now become his own. A dark pact was sealed between them, their two paths now forged into one. As they sat across from one another, the weight of their shared purpose hung in the air. With a steady voice, Kaido announced that it was now his turn to tell her about his past. He then revealed the unbelievable truth that he was a hero summoned to this world from another place entirely. While Minaris was initially confused by the concept of a first life, Kaido patiently explained the details. Drawing on the knowledge she'd gained from their pact, she was finally able to comprehend the truth of his reincarnation. With a newfound determination in her eyes, Minaris stated that from now on, they would fight together. Kaido quietly affirmed her declaration, their alliance now forged in the fires of shared trauma and vengeance. In the days that followed, Kaido unleashed his fury upon the monsters of the forest. His blade cut through a massive boar-like creature with a furious cry. With swift, efficient movements, he felled the powerful beast without hesitation. He relentlessly carved a path through the wilderness, leaving only destruction in his wake. After another successful hunt, he paused for a moment, catching his breath before checking his progress. He then pulled up his status screen, seeing that his efforts had earned him over 3,000 experience points. Kaido reflected that the knights from the summoning chamber had been nothing more than ornamental guards. However, he knew his current power level was still far from sufficient to challenge the kingdom's true, battle-hardened knights. He sighed, lamenting the crushing 20,000 experience point penalty the goddess had inflicted upon him. Making a strategic choice, he decided to postpone leveling up in favor of unsealing a powerful item from his past, the eight-eyed clear origin blade. Seeing the cost was 3,000 points, he immediately spent his entire surplus to reclaim his old power. Opting against leveling up, Kaido instead summoned a familiar weapon from his past, the legendary eight-eyed clear origin blade. With a simple tap, he activated a unique function embedded within the dagger's hilt. Instantly, the system began to flip through countless pages of stored information. A holographic screen materialized before Kaido, displaying a vast library of data. To his astonishment, he realized all of his appraisal records and bestiary data from his first life had been perfectly preserved. Satisfied with this discovery, Kaido dismissed the projected screen with another tap. He then sheathed the weapon, deciding it was best to keep it summoned and ready for immediate use. Next, Kaido decided to investigate his own condition, commanding his personal status window to open. As his stats appeared before him, he initiated a deep appraisal on himself using the dagger's power. He then confirmed his suspicions his titles had carried over, explaining his exceptionally high stats for a mere level 1. His own status confirmed, Kaido made his way back through the woods toward their secluded cabin. As he approached, a familiar voice called out to him, addressing him as her master. He found Minaris outside and immediately questioned why she wasn't in bed, to which she insisted that she was fine and fully recovered. To verify her claim, Kaido activated his dagger's power once more, performing an appraisal on Minaris. The results confirmed the debility status was gone, and he marveled at how incredibly fast her recovery was, attributing it to her beastman physiology. When Minaris curiously asked if he was looking at a status board, Kaido clarified that it was a special data board only visible with his unique blade. Changing the subject, Kaido declared it was time to eat, and Minaris quickly replied that she had already prepared a meal. Kaido offered a simple thanks, causing Minaris to look away with a slight blush. He expressed his gratitude once more, prompting Minaris to state that she was merely performing her duties as his slave. Inside, Minaris presented a steaming bowl of soup, urging him to eat it while it was still hot. As Kaido prepared to eat, he noticed something unusual on the table beside the bowl. He questioned the origin of the wooden spoon, and Minaris proudly explained that she had carved it herself to make eating the soup easier. Impressed, Kaido remarked on her handy skills, and she added that wood carving was a source of income for her village in the winter. However, with a critical eye, she admitted that she wasn't happy with the result and planned to remake it. Kaido took a bite of the soup and immediately dismissed her concerns, telling her the spoon seemed perfectly fine to him. Minaris then timidly asked for his opinion on the soup, and with a kind smile, Kaido told her it was absolutely delicious. He looked at her directly and complimented her cooking skills, leaving Minaris momentarily speechless. A short while later, all that remained of the meal was an empty wooden bowl. After finishing, Kaido once again thanked her for the wonderful meal, and Minaris replied that she was happy it was to his liking. Intrigued by his formal gesture, she asked about it, and Kaido explained it was a custom from his original world. The phrase "original world" immediately caught Minaris' attention, her expression turning serious. With a hint of concern in her voice, she asked if her master ever planned to return to his home. With a soft laugh, Kaido calmly told her that she had nothing to worry about. He reassured the visibly relieved Minari that he had no intention of leaving this world until his revenge was complete. But then Kaido's demeanor shifted as he prepared to reveal a deeper, more painful truth. He confessed that even if he finished his quest and found a way back, he would likely remain in this world. With a somber smile, he admitted that after everything he had endured, he could no longer turn back or repair the person he once was. Shifting gears, Kaido declared they should focus on the problems ahead, just as Minaris eagerly offered to tidy the dishes herself. Her offer was insistent, a cheerful attempt to serve her master in any way she could. While Minaris reached for his bowl, Kaido tried to explain their immediate priority was finding a way to increase their strength. Lost in her own thoughts of servitude, she continued to ignore him, forcing Kaido to pointedly ask if she was even listening. With an unnervingly wide grin, Minaris simply repeated with great emphasis that she would tidy the dishes herself. An awkward silence passed between the two as Kaido was momentarily thrown off by her bizarre fixation. Breaking the strange tension, Minaris nonchalantly asked what their next move was, making Kaido forget what he was about to say. After clearing his throat to regain his composure, Kaido finally began to lay out his plan for the next 10 days. He declared that they would venture into an undiscovered dungeon with the sole purpose of killing every single monster inside it, leaving Minaris shocked. Needing to be sure, she asked if he truly meant every last one, and Kaido affirmed his command without a hint of hesitation. Later that night, the two settled into their separate beds, the weight of their grim new purpose hanging in the air. While Minaris quickly fell into a peaceful sleep, Kaido remained wide awake, his eyes fixed on the path of vengeance that lay before them. To solidify their dark alliance, Kaido had already revealed his greatest secret, confessing to Minaris that he was a hero who had been summoned from another world. A painful memory flooded Ukai Kaido's mind, making him feel sick to his stomach as he recalled the ultimate betrayal. His mind flashed back to the desperate moment he had pleaded for it all to stop. He remembered screaming in disbelief, asking why his own comrades were attacking him after everything they had been through together. In response, one of them had coldly declared him the new Demon Lord, stating it would be very troubling if he didn't die. Another former ally, a woman with a chilling smile, had thanked him for being her personal lab rat. A third grimaced, revealing his business couldn't possibly continue to run so long as the hero was still alive. The bitterness of that moment was overwhelming. Kaido recalled how the very kingdom he protected had turned on him, making him want to give up. However, the one thing that kept him going was the promise he made to the dying Demon Lord Letitia to return to her family. He remembered their solemn pact, made after she purposefully allowed him to kill her so he could take her magic core. Kaido had realized in that moment that she was sacrificing everything, as the summoning ritual also required an immense amount of mana. With a sad but gentle smile, Letitia had simply reminded him of their agreement to have no hard feelings, whatever the result might be. Back in the present, the now fugitive Kaido rustled through the woods, his identity concealed by a dark hooded cloak. Panting with exhaustion, he cursed his dire circumstances under his breath. He lamented that even though he had come so far, he found himself unable to even enter the royal capital. Suddenly, a rustle from the nearby bushes made him gasp, and he defensively demanded to know who was there. To his surprise, a man and a woman emerged, apologizing for startling him and recognizing him as the hero who had saved them. Still wary of everyone, Kaido glared at the pair and curtly asked what they wanted. The man nervously offered to help Kaido get inside the kingdom, an offer that left the fugitive hero momentarily stunned. For a moment, Kaido was speechless, completely taken aback by their unexpected kindness. Believing he had finally found people he could trust, Kaido gratefully accepted their help, and the couple eagerly assured him they would handle it. The very next day, however, Kaido sat in a tavern and overheard a man claiming the hero had secret connections with the demon folk. As another patron expressed disbelief, the slanderer insisted it was true, even blaming Kaido for a recent incident in the slums. The gossiper continued his lies, claiming the hero had told His Majesty that slum dwellers were scum who should be enslaved. Listening with quiet rage, Kaido wondered why these vicious rumors followed him everywhere, growing worse with each passing day. He bitterly reflected on his situation, unable to even walk outside without using a magic sword to disguise his appearance as a woman. Just then, two boorish men approached his table, cheerfully asking the young lady if she'd like to join them for a drink. Kaido flatly refused their advance and walked away, prompting one of the men to scoff at what a boring woman she was. Leaving the tavern behind, Kaido walked through the rain and resolved to infiltrate the palace the following night. His plan was to find the summoning room and demand answers for why the kingdom had betrayed him over such baseless rumors. However, he quickly reconsidered, deciding his top priority should instead be finding a way back to his own world. As he moved deeper into the dark, rainy alley, a sudden movement caused him to turn sharply. He came to a complete stop, sensing that he was no longer alone in the desolate passageway. Kaido called out into the rain, demanding that his unseen follower reveal what they wanted from him. When only dead silence answered him, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. He muttered to himself that if they wanted to do things the hard way, then he would oblige. As he took another cautious step forward, splashing through a puddle, he felt the presence of others around him. In an instant, two cloaked figures emerged from the shadows, blocking his path. Before he could react, a third assailant appeared behind him, pressing a cold blade against his throat. But with blinding speed, Kaido reversed their ambush, holding one of the men hostage with his own dagger and demanding to know how they had found him. Terrified, the captured man begged Kaido to calm down, frantically explaining that they were messengers sent by Her Highness. He swore they had only come to town investigating a rumor about a woman who bore a striking resemblance to the hero. Recognizing the man's face, Kaido questioned what Alicia, the princess of the kingdom that betrayed him, could possibly want now. The messenger desperately insisted that the princess had never betrayed him and was, in fact, risking everything to help him return home as promised. He revealed that the king and princess were forced to follow the Saintess's declaration to protect their own lives. The man argued that since only the royal family knew the details of the summoning ritual, Kaido absolutely needed Her Highness's help. Lowering his blade slightly, Kaido impassively asked them what exactly they wanted him to do. Nervously, the second messenger requested that Kaido accompany them to their hideout to meet with the princess as soon as possible. With Kaido's blade still close, the man tried to reassure him, promising that they were on the brave hero's side. Kaido's eye narrowed in deep suspicion, wondering if he could truly afford to trust them after all that had happened. The captive stammered that Her Highness was still deeply worried about the hero, as they hadn't seen each other since before the final battle. Appearing from the shadows, one of the messengers pleaded with Kaido to believe them, claiming it was the only way they could have found him so quickly. In response, the cloaked Kaido repeated their plea back to them, his suspicion evident in his tone. After a tense moment, Kaido put a blade to the sweating man's throat and coldly commanded him to lead the way. As they walked, the guide informed the brave hero that they were heading towards the very room where he had been summoned. He further elaborated on the plan to use a teleportation stone to reach a hideout, where Kaido could wait for the sending ritual. Silently, Kaido listened with a troubled expression, his unease palpable despite the reassurances. With a heavy heart, Kaido briefly thought about thanking the people who had given him shelter, but decided against it. He concluded that it was ultimately for the best that those kind souls were not involved any further in his dangerous affairs. Noticing their strange route through the rain-soaked alleys, Kaido finally questioned why they weren't going directly to the palace. In response, the guide revealed that a secret passage directly connected to the summoning room was hidden nearby. A short while later, their guide stopped before a worn wooden trapdoor on the ground and announced that they had arrived. With a swift motion, the messenger then reached down towards the rain-slicked wood to open the hidden entrance. A low rattling sound echoed as the heavy door was lifted, revealing a dark, descending passage below. Kaido watched impassively from under his hood as the path into the earth was revealed before him. Holding a single candle aloft, the guide then beckoned the brave hero to watch his step as they began their descent. Into the pitch-black depths of the secret tunnel they went, leaving the rainy world above behind. The flickering candlelight illuminated the rough-hewn walls as their solemn footsteps echoed through the silence. Deeper inside, the group approached a set of finished stone stairs that led upwards towards their final destination. At the top of the stairs, the guide placed his hands flat against the cold stone wall, searching for the hidden mechanism. Suddenly, a glint in the guide's eye indicated that their clandestine journey was finally at its end. With a low rumble, a secret panel in the wall slid aside, flooding the dark passage with brilliant light. Cautiously, Kaido stepped out from the darkness of the tunnel and into the familiar, brightly lit chamber. Immediately, Princess Alicia rushed towards him with a wide smile, exclaiming how glad she was that the brave hero was all right. She earnestly asked if he was hurt, but Kaido, after confirming he was fine, questioned how she had recognized him in his disguise. With a reassuring smile, Alicia explained that since he had told her about his Amanojaku's mirror sword, it wasn't hard to figure out. Hearing this logical explanation, Kaido let out a quiet sigh of relief, thankful that she hadn't attacked him on sight. Pressing for time, Alicia then held out a teleportation stone, asking him to take it for now. She promised to explain the details of the hero's sending ritual once he reached his destination, to which Kaido simply agreed. Firmly gripping the stone, Kaido stood in the center of the floor as a glowing magic circle began to activate beneath his feet. As swirling particles of light enveloped the hero, Princess Alicia watched him with a strange, unreadable expression. However, the gentle look on her face suddenly warped as a quiet, sinister chuckle escaped her lips. Her voice, now dripping with cold mockery, then asked him just how unbelievably stupid he could possibly be. The warmth in the room instantly vanished, replaced by a chilling aura that emanated from the princess. Alicia's eyes, now utterly merciless, stared down at the hero, whose own eyes widened in the dawning horror of betrayal. In that moment, her cruel words echoed in his mind as the terrible truth of his situation became terrifyingly clear. Suddenly, a swift motion from off-panel sent a jolt of pure shock through Kaido's entire being. Reacting on pure instinct, Kaido threw his arm up to block a massive descending blow, the clang of steel shaking the room. Thrown backward by the sheer force of the surprise assault, Kaido stared in utter confusion at what was happening. Immediately, he was forced into a desperate defense, deflecting a furious barrage of attacks that came from all sides. With his cloak fluttering around him, Kaido fully drew his infamous weapon, the Amanojaku's mirror sword. The teleportation had been a complete lie. He now saw that the chamber was filled with an entire platoon of royal knights. All of them had their swords drawn and pointed directly at him, with a triumphant Princess Alicia standing calmly in their midst. From his kneeling position on the cold stone, Kaido saw that he was completely and hopelessly surrounded by his former comrades. To his mounting horror, he began to recognize the faces of the very knights he had once fought and bled alongside. Even the younger squires he had personally trained were among the traitors, their expressions grim and resolute. With a tired sigh, Princess Alicia lamented how much she hated dealing with an idiot who possessed a little bit of skill. In absolute desperation, Kaido screamed out to Alicia, demanding to know why she was betraying him. With a contemptuous look, Alicia simply opened her mouth, ready to deliver the final soul-crushing blow. She corrected him with a sneer, informing him that it couldn't be a betrayal, as they were never allies to begin with. Finally, she revealed her true disgust, asking how he could have possibly expected her to side with something as gross as an alien life form. With a chilling smile, Princess Alicia dropped her benevolent facade, admitting to Kaido that her entire act had been a disgusting charade. Kneeling and defeated, Kaido could only ask Alicia how she could betray him after everything, as she mocked him for being as resilient as a sewer rat. One of her knights then explained their trap was foolproof, as the room prevented teleportation and the guards blocked the only exit. Enraged by the absolute betrayal, Kaido could only seethe in silent frustration at his own powerlessness. Another guard continued the mockery, expressing his relief that Kaido turned out to be nothing more than an utter fool. In utter shock, Kaido realized this foolishness was precisely why he had been so easily deceived by the very vagrants he had helped in the slums. Alicia smugly confirmed his fears, revealing that she had been informed of his location the very moment he set foot in town. Furthermore, she taunted him with the fact that it only took a mere 3 gold coins to make the people he saved betray him. The hero was haunted by the memory of the vagrants, who had once tearfully promised to show their gratitude for saving their lives. Shaking with despair, Kaido cursed his own fate, unable to believe they would betray him so easily. In that dark moment, he resigned himself to the belief that this was the brutal price he had to pay for his naivety. Still clinging to a sliver of hope for understanding, Kaido desperately demanded to know why she wanted to kill him so badly. Amused, Alicia decided to entertain her useful sewer rat a little longer, accusing him of merely trying to buy time. She began by providing a political reason, explaining that a hero who had killed the demon lord could become a spark for rebellion. Thus, she had made him a convenient scapegoat, directing all the people's post-war dissatisfaction and stress onto him. As Kaido tried to protest this twisted logic, she cut him off, stating that the public needed an outlet for their frustrations. However, she then confessed that this was merely the official reason she had provided to her parents, the king and queen. Her eyes burning with a terrifying intensity, Alicia revealed the true reason was that she simply refused to accept his existence. Suddenly, her royal composure shattered, and she began screaming that he was a disgusting alien monster who dared to take a human form. Kaido stared in stunned silence as she continued to rage about him daring to speak the same language as her. In her warped view, his very being was far more revolting than any of the demi-humans or beast folk that inhabited their world. Completely floored by the sheer depth of her unprovoked hatred, Kaido was rendered utterly speechless. After her furious outburst, Alicia regained her composure, calmly stating that none of it mattered now. With a chillingly sweet smile, she announced that since he was going to die anyway, she would now fulfill her promise to send him back home. The hero was completely bewildered by this sudden and seemingly merciful offer from the woman who despised him. To prove her sincerity, she told him she would use the prayer's vow, a powerful magic that made her incapable of telling a lie. She began the ritual, swearing on both of her arms that she would be completely honest about the summoning rituals. With a soft glow, she invoked the ancient spell, binding herself to tell nothing but the absolute truth. Once the vow was active, she prepared to speak, a predatory glint in her eyes that made Kaido's blood run cold. He watched her with growing dread, wondering why she would go to such extreme lengths just for this conversation. Alicia began her lesson by explaining that the summoning rituals were simple, requiring only the preparation of the correct sacrifices. She listed the first 2 sacrifices, an ancient magic circle and an object containing an enormous amount of mana. The princess then paused her explanation, sadistically asking if he could guess what the final sacrifice was. She mocked his ignorance, stating that magic powerful enough to intrude on the domain of the gods obviously required more than just mana. With her hand, she illustrated the 4 steps of the ritual, opening a hole in their world, then his, and finally connecting the 2. Finally, she explained the 4th step was attracting the target, clarifying that mana was only used as a catalyst and an offering for this purpose. Her careful wording left Kaido deeply confused, making him wonder what the other, unmentioned offerings were truly used for. Seeing his dawning horror, Alicia smiled, telling him that if he still didn't understand, she would give him a hint. A cold dread washed over Kaido as she began to explain what was offered up to forcefully open a space-time hole in their world. His world shattered when Alicia revealed the horrifying truth. 200 lives were taken at the ritual site as blood sacrifices. Having delivered the shocking blow, the princess calmly informed him that she was now going to change her question slightly. She recapped the fact that they had sacrificed 200 beast folk and slaves just to open the portal on their side. Kaido stood frozen in silence, his mind struggling to process the sheer scale of the atrocity committed to bring him there. With a voice dripping with venom, she reminded the hero of a question she had asked him once before, long ago. She pointedly asked him to recall who had been around him at the exact moment he had been summoned from his world. Then she delivered the final, soul-crushing question, who had been sacrificed to open the hole in his world? Instantly, a vivid memory of his high school classroom, filled with the smiling faces of his friends and classmates, flashed before his eyes. As Kaido stammered in absolute denial, Alicia reminded him of her prayer's vow, showing her intact arms as proof she was telling the truth. With a final triumphant grin, she declared it an undeniable fact that 200 people around him at the time were sacrificed so that he could be summoned there. With a final triumphant grin, she declared it an undeniable fact that 200 people around him at the time were sacrificed so that he could be summoned there. Enraged by the betrayal, Kaido screamed in agony as one of the princess's knights delivered a powerful kick to his stomach. At the same time, the other knights began chanting an incantation, casting a spell called Iron Binding Thorns to restrain him. Suddenly, magical barbed wire erupted from the ground, wrapping around Kaido's limbs and rendering him immobile. While he struggled violently against his bonds, Princess Alicia simply giggled, telling him not to get in her way. Calmly, Alicia reminded the captive hero that she still hadn't answered his question about who was sacrificed for his summoning. With a sickeningly sweet smile, she began her explanation, stating that the space between worlds was the exclusive domain of the gods. She continued, elaborating that a mere mortal would never be able to pass through such a place unscathed. Chillingly, she offered an example of the kind of sacrifice needed to protect him, suggesting people like his own family and relatives. Horrified, Kaido froze, unable to comprehend the true meaning behind her cruel words. His mind went completely blank as the terrible implication of her story began to sink in. Terrified, Kaido desperately tried to deny the possibility, whispering to himself that it couldn't possibly be true. However, Alicia confirmed his deepest fears with glee, repeating that his family and all his close friends were the sacrifices. Looking down on his shattered form, the princess put it simply, informing him that they were all dead now. Utterly broken, Kaido questioned the point of her promise to return him home if his family was already gone. In response, Alicia erupted into maniacal laughter, confessing she had waited so long to see that exact expression of despair on his face. She then taunted him mercilessly, calling him a pathetic clown and declaring that everyone he loved was 6 feet under. She mocked his desire to go back to his world, calling him stupid for wanting to see friends and family who were already dead. With a smug grin, Alicia admitted how difficult it had been to contain her laughter whenever he spoke of his dream to return. Completely overwhelmed by the horrific truth, Kaido weakly pleaded with her to stop her torment. Ignoring his pleas, Alicia began to cruelly mimic his past self, recalling his wish to play with his friends and eat with his family again. After her performance, she asked him what he thought of her imitation, proudly proclaiming her skill. She then made a vile suggestion, telling him that if he wanted to go home so badly, he should just rape some beastmen to create a new whole. With eyes wide with madness, Alicia promised that if he did have any children, she would personally kill them. Her justification was simple, as she questioned what could be worse than a monster born from a person from another world. Having finally reached his breaking point, Kaido let out a primal scream of Alicia's name, shattering his magical bonds with sheer force of will. Immediately, the royal guards swarmed him, leveling their swords to cut down the enraged hero. A knight shouted an order, telling his men to concentrate all of their firepower on Kaido. Undeterred, Kaido charged headfirst into the squadron of knights, deflecting their blades as they swung at him. Blinded by rage, he failed to block one of the incoming attacks, leaving himself wide open. A sword struck him square in the chest, but the wound did little to slow his furious advance. Using one knight as a shield, Kaido screamed for the others to move out of his path. His eyes burned with pure hatred as he bellowed for them to get out of his way. Finally reaching his target, he roared for the princess to die for her unforgivable sins. However, as his hands made contact, Alicia's form shimmered and dissolved, revealing itself to be nothing more than an illusion. With his guard down, Kaido was struck by a volley of arrows fired from a distance. The grievous wounds and sheer exhaustion finally caught up to him, causing his legs to give out. Powerless, he collapsed to his knees, cornered and bleeding against the cold stone wall. At that moment, the real Alicia's voice echoed, mocking him for being an idiot who couldn't even perceive a simple illusion. She appeared before him with her guards, condescendingly asking how bad his eyes truly were. With a chillingly placid smile, the princess declared that it was now the end. Alicia stated that as thanks for his amusing dance of despair, she would grant him the honor of being killed by her own hands. As he faced his demise, Kaido's final thoughts drifted to the one person he had wronged, the demon lord Letitia. He vividly recalled the moment she had knelt before him, her hands placed on the ground in a gesture of supplication. In that memory, Letitia had promised him anything he desired, even offering him half of the world. Her one and only condition was a simple request for him to please stay by her side. He remembered the sincerity in her voice as she had begged him, a plea he had foolishly cast aside. Snapping back to the present, the saint, another of his former comrades, raised her sword high, commanding the monster before her to die. Her face was a mask of cold fury as she prepared to deliver the final blow to the monster from another world. But just as her blade began its descent, a brilliant light suddenly erupted from the center of Kaido's chest. In response to his impending death, the demon core gifted to him by Letitia flared to life, shocking the would-be executioner. As Princess Alicia closed in for the kill, she recoiled in shock, asking what strange object was suddenly emerging from Kaido's chest. In the next moment, a massive crystalline object erupted from his body, hovering ominously in the center of the chamber. The surrounding knights stared in utter disbelief, questioning what this strange artifact could possibly be. Before they could react, the crystal's dormant energy began to violently coalesce into a monstrous form. With a deafening roar, two gigantic tiger guardians wreathed in ethereal flames materialized before the terrified soldiers. Panicked, the lead knight questioned how the legendary guardians could have been resurrected and ordered his men to protect the princess. Amidst the chaos, Kaido clenched his teeth, a look of grim understanding spreading across his face. He realized in that instant that the guardians had been revived using the immense power of the demon core he possessed. Seizing his one and only chance for escape, Kaido roared out his defiance and charged forward with an explosive burst of speed. The royal knights were completely stunned by his incredible velocity, with one screaming for him to stop immediately. Effortlessly, he activated the skywalk skill to weave through their disorganized and panicked ranks. Leaving a trail of incapacitated soldiers behind him, he drew a desperate shout from Alicia, who insisted that he must not be allowed to escape. In response, the remaining knights formed a tight wall of steel, determined to block his path to the exit. A desperate resolve filled Kaido's eyes as a single thought dominated his mind. He decided that even if he were to die immediately afterwards, taking just one step out of this room would be his victory. With tears of blood streaming down his face, he quietly vowed that he would have his revenge. Turning back to face a smirking Alicia, he declared with absolute hatred that he would never forgive her for this betrayal. A wave of pure anguish washed over him as the weight of his reality finally crashed down. Fueled by his bottomless rage and despair, he slammed his hands onto the stone floor to prepare a final attack. He then unleashed his ultimate skill, the cruel blade Firebird Burst Lightning Flash Flower, to scatter his foes. A devastating wave of energy tore through the chamber as an officer screamed for the men to raise their shields. Using the chaos as a distraction, Kaido leaped over the knight's shield wall, making a final sprint for the door. However, Princess Alicia struck him from behind with a powerful spell, screaming that she would not let him get away. Though thrown to the ground, Kaido revealed his trump card by activating a teleportation magic circle beneath him. Realizing she had been thoroughly outplayed, Alicia cried out for him to wait, knowing it was already too late. In his final moment in that chamber, Kaido willed the spell to take him as far away as possible. A brilliant flash of light then consumed the entire room. Seconds later, Kaido found himself reappearing under an open, rainy sky. He fell through the air, his battered body finally giving out from the intense battle and his desperate escape. Landing hard in a muddy field, his first thought was that he needed to cure his grievous wounds. But as he slumped over in pain, he realized with dread that he had exhausted too much energy and had no MP left to heal himself. He struggled against a nearby tree, using it for support as he fought to stay conscious. In that desolate moment, he came to the painful conclusion that the people he had once believed in had been his enemies from the very beginning. The cold rain continued to fall, mirroring the chilling despair that now filled his heart. Overwhelmed by this crushing reality, he let out a choked sigh of utter defeat. Looking up into the gray sky, he quietly questioned his own purpose in this cruel world. He wondered what he was supposed to do now after everything he had fought for had been revealed as a lie. He could no longer find a single reason why he should even continue to stay alive. It was in that moment of absolute hopelessness that a precious memory surfaced in his mind. He remembered the demon lord Letitia, who had once advised him to live in a way that would leave no regrets. Her powerful words echoed in his soul, sparking a faint flicker of resolve within him. Driven by her memory, Kaido slowly and painfully pushed himself back onto his feet. He reflected that even though he had lost his will to live, he ultimately could not bring himself to die. He knew that thanks to Letitia, he had come to love this world, and for her sake, he couldn't stop here. He reasoned that if he were to die having given up, he would never be able to face her in the afterlife. And for that reason alone, he resolved that he was going to keep walking forward, no matter what. As the painful flashback concluded, Kaido whispered an apology to the sky, regretful that he had failed the one person who truly saved him.